Hey!
Hey, stepping up my song. How are you?
Good, how are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me.
No problem. Thank you for joining me. What's going on? Y'all are all open and stuff, aren't y'all?
Yes, we're pretty much open. But I think, we're gonna wait and see what happens in August and September. I think we're up to some surprises, but hey, we're open.
I
Safe though,
got you.
isn't it?
As long as you all keep the bars closed for now, it seems like that's what starts everything back up again when the bars and stuff start getting open. So
True.
we'll see.
Well, I'm not a bar person, so I won't be
Hey! Yeah, you're good. You're good. I wanted to thank you as well for joining me. These have been super interesting, and especially when I've run across people in person, either in the studio or been talking to other people in the industry, and names have come up. It's always made it cool to have these type of conversations afterwards. So I wanted to start in. Feel free to acknowledge anybody you choose as they pop in. I'm sure there'll be a lot of people popping in saying hi. It's all good. I uh,
beautiful, beautiful.
I wanted to start by asking you what I do my research or whatever. So sometimes the internet is wrong, you know. But I wanted to find out, where did you actually grow up in Holland? I saw a couple of cities.
True, true. So originally, I was brought up in the province of Utrecht. So that's in the middle of the Netherlands. And knowing that you toured a lot, I bet you've been in Utrecht
I have.
before. Tivoli, haven't you?
Yeah.
The Podia Tivoli, yes. So that's where I've been brought up. And when I got older, I moved to Amsterdam because that's where it's cooking, That's where everything's happening.
Okay. So I saw that your mom is from Curacao, right?
True,
Okay.
yes.
Now let me ask you this,
Mhm.
and this is just, it might be seem completely random, but um, when you have when you come from a multicultural background in school and growing up, do you ever, and this is just something I don't know about Holland, but it's, you would have to tell me, do you feel that you have to choose between one or the other, or is it always just inclusive of everything?
The last is definitely not the reality. What people don't know is that the Netherlands are Dutch people. So if you look at the world history, Dutch people were one of the biggest colonizers in the entire world, right? So even a lot of the American people right now, the white American people, Van der Dijk, all those names that you hear, they're actually German or Dutch. So just to interlude to the fact that there are a lot of racists here,
Gotcha.
but we don't have to fear our lives.
Okay.
That's the only difference. I'm not afraid when I see a cop. I can go to a cop, like give him a box and like talk with him. But there are racists among us. I know they are a lot. Yeah.
Okay. How then did that play into your musical upbringing? Did you start when you were very little? Were you listening to, I don't want to say American music, but were you listening to English language music, or were you listening to Dutch music? Was it combined? How did that go?
Pretty much only American music. Yes.
Okay.
So a lot of Sade, a lot of gospel. I was a big, huge fan of Out of Eden. I don't know how old you are, but if you remember them, it's
I've heard
pretty
of it.
old in
Yeah.
a way. It's in the same line as Destiny's Child. So me being brought up in church, that was my first girl group I listened to. What else? Ron Canoli, Bob Marley, you
Okay.
know, yeah, old school stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, great influences though, for sure. Um, okay, so growing up in church and the fact that there's praise and worship in church, is that what introduced you to playing instruments? That's the first part of the question. And the second part is, what was the first instrument that you started to play?
Um, Church was definitely my introduction to music. Uh, the first church that my parents visited with us, as you know, as their kids, was a mixed Caribbean church. So you got to understand that they had a lot of the gospel influences, but they mingled it with Caribbean rhythmic sessions. So you would have a gospel song. Donnie McClurkin has done it a lot, you know. Donnie
Yeah.
McClurkin has twisted his music here and there, and that's how I grew up in church. So later on, I was always fascinated with the drums, but you know, we were in a social housing, so that wasn't an option. So I chose for the keyboard.
Ah, nice. All right, cool. And I've
Shout out
seen,
to Precious.
so I also, a lot of people don't know this about me. So I'm going to share something about me, which will lead me to my next question. Uh, for those people who know me or don't know me, there was a time period in my life where I was away from home, uh, in school, and I was doing my thing, and I ended up being homeless. Uh,
Mm,
and I slept in my car for uh, about a month, off and on, and I also slept on friends of mine's floors and stuff like that for about 2 months. It wasn't that I could not have gone home. I could have gone
mhm.
home, but where I'm from, you don't go home. You don't go home. You stay away. If you have a dream, you accomplish it by staying away. So it was an interesting time for me, but I look back on it in a certain type of way now that I've gotten past it. So the internet, we're talking about the internet here. So I wanted to see what your experience might have been with maybe any type of tougher time where you just had to depend on yourself and kind of get it together.
Um, Good question. I think you already know the answer on it, though. But yeah, there were definitely very hard times. And you know, even that part when you come and talk about homelessness and talking about crashing on, you know, people's floor, or you know, whenever, or couches, or even chairs. That's definitely something I've experienced as well. And I think those periods of not having that stability, not having, you know, that core where you can hold on to, actually really forms you as a person. And I think for me personally, because I believe in God, I believe that was a really tough process whereby God was, how, like a potter is making a vase, right? I felt like that was one of the toughest moments where he was forming me into the character that I needed eventually for the moment when I would left my home country. So, you know, my tough times were there, but when I look at it, but you know, I'm very thankful and grateful to God that he protected me, that he
Yeah.
guided me, and that, you know, that I am where I am today.
Yeah, that's awesome. Um, I saw that you went to a couple of like music schools.
True.
Um, what is that? What's that like in Holland? Do you feel like that affected your creativity at all, or was it all? Did you learn everything that you learned you could use?
Okay, before we go to that question, can I circle back because we went
Sure.
through that topic, and I'm really curious how your experience was in that period of time. No, because you're shifting really quick, you know,
Yeah.
and I'm just really curious how you experienced that process.
Um, for me, it was very tough at first because I was out of college. I was just out of college. I had
Mm,
done the right thing. I had gotten great grades. I
mm,
had met a lot of people in music. So there was an expectation that I had for being successful. And at the time, I was living with, I'm telling my business, but I was living, when I was in college, I started dating a woman that was older than me. And she
mm.
was like 12 years older than me. Okay.
Uh-oh.
So I was like, I thought I was the man, you know? And my brother and I lived together at the time. And
Mhm,
when our lease was up, I moved in with her. And it was all well and good until it wasn't well and good. And
mhm,
we got into a disagreement, and she was like, "You got to go," and I'm like, "Can't be serious, you know." This is someone who said they, loved me, let's say, and I always was brought up like, if you love somebody, you'll never like go beyond a certain point. So for me, it was an opportunity to, although it was tough, when I walked out the door, I knew that I had a way out of the relationship. So I took that along with the trouble that came with it. I mean, I had all my stuff in my car. I went and took my stuff to all my different friends' places. And, the first day I was at the grocery store, I called my parents and they were like, "You got to come home." I was like, "I can't, you know." So it made me very humble, you know. I started to question a lot of things, but during, when you ask a lot of questions, sometimes you get a lot of answers. So it wasn't long before I was put in a position to be restored, and it's something that I think about all the time. And I definitely feel like it's affected my attitude. Like, I go after everything like there's no tomorrow, because I just know, what types of experiences I've already had, and I also look at it like, if there's something that comes up that's new, I'm like, it's nothing compared to that,
Yeah, exactly. And what was, if you reminisce back to that point, what was the first thing? What is the first thing that pops into your mind that you can say that what that really pulled you through it? Was it your brother? Was it your friends? Was it family? Was it, I don't know, what was it, music?
I would say it was music in a weird way, because the day that I got kicked out, I had done a contest and I got like second place or something, right? And I had been waiting on this little prize money to come. And the day that I got kicked out is the day that the check came.
Oh,
So
wow.
it was like a weird thing, because I was excited because I finally got paid from this situation. And at the same time, that actual incident is what caused her to kick me out. So
Wow.
it was weird, because I'm like, yo, music gave you something, but also it was the result of some success that caused you to have a rift in your relationship. So the thing that pulled me through was calling a couple of friends and realizing that you don't have to be family to support somebody and to take somebody in. So, that my people took me in, and, I lived out of a suitcase for a while, and, I worked my way back up.
Amazing. So actually you winning and being, lifted up, it was like a paradigm shift for you, not knowing that you had to sacrifice to get, the next season and the next level in your life. That's a beautiful story. Are you thinking about writing a book about it?
Uh,
I'm sorry, we're switching it up.
yeah,
What
yeah.
are we gonna do?
You know, there's a memoir that I think a lot of people would be very interested. I know a lot of people. I've run across a lot of people in my journey, and I've had a lot of really interesting experiences. Maybe at some point, I definitely will. So yeah.
Okay, cool. Well, I'll be buying it, definitely.
All right. Okay.
Sorry, I'm back in my position, back in my role.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. All right, everybody. Okay. That was the Cam moment. I shared my life with you. Okay. All right. Okay. Um, School. I always thought it was interesting that you guys had different institutions over there that you could go if you really were passionate about the arts and wanted to pursue music. How was that for you? Did it affect your creativity at all, or do you feel like it only helped you?
In a way that I had the opportunity to go and study.
Well, like, sometimes I used to be afraid of going to a music school because I thought my teachers would try to make me look at music the same way they looked at music. So I
We
didn't
have the
necessarily.
same here. But
Okay.
but you have to be very rebellion, and me knowing me, I'm not saying I'm a rebellion, but I definitely have my own way of looking at things. And you got to understand these institutes are predominantly white. They want you to love Beatles, Rolling Stones, and if you're doing classic or jazz, study, Beethoven, and that's actually the box they're in. And I feel like the moment I went to the conservatory, they opened up way more, because the generations before me always indeed were so negative about, you have to teach, practice your skills, and this, and if you don't do your Dorians enough, and then blah, blah, like all those types of things, right? And I feel like my department, because it was the pop department, the second one I did at the conservatory, it was so, I think they would have wanted me to be more in their curves line, but I was like, no, I'm doing this on my way or it's the highway. And thank God they didn't kick me out.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. So tell me about competition shows. I was on a
Yeah.
competition show here. It didn't go too well for me. So I always, and I know quite a few other people who've been in that world as well. And when I see people that have had that experience, I always want to know what was it like for them, because I had my own experience. Was it was it positive overall?
It's a TV show. I remember I stepped into, because I did two. I did X Factor, and then later on I did The Voice. Um, it's a mindset of, I was studying and I wanted to know how the TV scene and the music scene in the TV world, how it worked. So what I was like, you know what? I'm just going behind the scene, and I'm a pretty social person. So what I would do, if we would have in between days and you would be on the set or behind, how do I pronounce that correctly? Anyway, behind the stage or whatever,
Behind the
you want to.
scenes or behind the
Thank you. Yeah, backstage, man. That was
backstage?
the
Gotcha.
word I was looking for. I would just go and talk to the producer. I would talk to the assistant. I would talk to the light guys. I would talk to the band. I would just go and communicate with everybody. I wasn't interested in winning. I was more so interested in understanding how the culture was behind the scene. Because at the end of the day, those people are just running a show. And people, a lot of the contestants, they got depressed, and they got in a way that they got their emotions too much intertwined. And the first one, I had that too, X Factor. I was like, man, it sucks. And then with The Voice, I was like, no, this is actually such a great and free learning school. Because if you don't know, you don't know. And let's be honest, it's a type of world with a type of people, and not everyone gets in. So if you can get in that way, you can understand and learn the language, because I did not know, right? So that was my experience. I can't say that I got major gigs or got signed or whatever, nothing. But I learned a lot.
Sweet. I think that's a very realistic perspective to have with it, because I think your story is a story that is like a real journey. You know what I mean? Like, it's not just overnight, but it's not without its share of things to keep you encouraged. And I feel like a lot of people watch these types of conversations for various reasons, but I think from an artistic side, people want to know and be encouraged that they can get to the point that they see someone else they admire get to as well. So I think that's cool.
And
That
that's true
perspective.
what you're saying.
Yeah.
That's true what you're saying. Look, if this mixed girl from the Netherlands, of this small village that nobody knows of, can, work and be signed by Rock Nation, everything, it's possible for everybody. But you do have to understand that this journey and it's a gift. It comes with sacrifices, and a lot of people don't want to sacrifice in their life. And you got to understand that even if you plant a seed, the seed needs to die within the ground in the darkness without nothing, around it. And it has to trust on the lightning and the warmth of the sun. It has to trust that the sun is the thing that will, like the phoenix, make him rise up again, right? And I always say to everybody, it's like, oh, you made it, I can make it. It's like, yeah, everybody can make it. I don't care what your condition is, what your belief, etc. is, but are you willing to pay the price? Because the blessing that God has for everyone, it comes with a price, right? And I believe that everyone is like, oh, God's grace and God's gonna come and he's gonna bless me. Okay, but did you put in the work? Did you make the sacrifice? Have you learned how to work with rejection? Have you learned a way when people, when they double cross you? Have you learned how to deal with that, how to forgive them? You can keep your distance, you don't have to work or mingle with them anymore, but have you learned how to forgive them in your heart? Have you learned how to forgive your family, your friends? Have you healed emotionally? There's like this whole list of the 15 past years that God was so like working on me. I was like, my first deal with EMI, that's like 10 years ago. I was like, woohoo! Like rock star, I'm like, Mama, I made it. I'm not I don't have to be homeless anymore. I was traveling the world. I was like, yes. And nothing happened. And the label dropped me. And then I went to school. And then Universal Music in the Netherlands signed me for 2 projects. I produced it. I did everything, blah, blah, blah. Got, famous Dutch people on it. Nothing happened. Nobody picked it up. I was like, God, are you gut nugget? Are you serious? And it took me so many sacrifices, working 3 jobs, night shift, from the night shift, come home, sleep 2 hours, go back to the conservatory, come back home, do another job, from that job, go to another job. It's like, are you willing? You want to be successful, but are you willing to pay the price? And that's only physical, right? We're not even talking about the spiritual sacrifices. Are you willing to communicate and build up this relationship with your creator so that the moment you're maneuvering into this promised land we call the music and entertainment industry, are you sensitive to the voice of the spirit? Do you know, like, okay, that person, yes, that person, heck no, right? Like all those things, you need to learn those things so that when you come to your promised place, God can use you effectively with your gifts.
Oh man, I
Yeah.
love it. I love it.
Sorry,
I
I
mean,
got a like TD Jakes Jr. in me.
no, it was cool because I've been having that type of conversation with people that I know, because everybody's journey is for them. It's not the same. It's not a one size fits all type of industry. So if you are running, I used to run track, so I used to always be like, if I was running the 100-meter dash, the moment I looked to the left or to the right, I pretty much had lost in a short sprint like that because everybody else was focused on what was ahead of them. So for me, I started trying to understand, like, listen, I can't look at someone else's success over here, someone else's success over there. I have to be focused on my race. So I like that confirmation, because it's even though you think that you have figured some things out, it's always good to reaffirm some things, to even
True.
recommit. You know what I'm
And,
saying?
and you will always learn, I think that's the journey. I think the moment you think you know it all, God is ready to humble your behind quick like that. Because if you think you already know everything, that means that, the one calls it the universe, I call it God. So I also want to respect everyone that's looking, maybe it's not a believer. It's like, okay, I call it the voice inside. Okay, cool. But that voice inside, that voice that has always, that gut feeling,
Yeah.
I feel like if you think you know it of everything, then that disappears. And that's the thing that will lead you towards the end line where we need to be in life eventually, right? So
Yes.
so that's the journey, man.
Yes. Okay. So what was the grand prize that you won for songwriting, and what was the song that?
Dang, you did your research good. Okay. I'm like time machine over here. Okay, so that's 2010. So I won the grand prize of the Netherlands, which was a contest for local and I think, yeah, nationwide artists that wanted to create original music. So you got to understand, right? So me being a musician, the first contest that I did was like this gospel challenge. And then I was like, okay, I'm never going to do a TV show because that's so made. I'm going to do something where you can do your own stuff. And that was the grand prize of the Netherlands. The only original stuff. No covers, nothing.
Nice.
So I won that with, I think, 3 songs that we performed. And that was great because it was a good taste for me how to interact with the Dutch public. And it actually led to my first music deal as well, recording deal.
Got you. Um, would you say when you think about American music that's influenced you, um, you have a tone that is very, there's something inside of it, you know? And I say that, and I think some people will understand what I mean, but you can hear a tone of a singer and know that based on certain elements of their vocal character that they learned how to sing, you know, and that singing maybe comes from here up. There are other singers where you hear their voice and you know it comes from like down from the gut, you know, from I say from the gut, from the pit of your stomach, more or
Yeah.
less.
Yeah.
So I wanted to know, out of American music that you listen to, because it seems like you've got a very good mixture of like a hip hop influence as well as like your other influence, your eclectic influences, like you talked about. Has hip hop been as an influence as well on your music also?
Yeah, most definitely. Especially when I did my first music education, there were only hip hop cats around me. And I remember that we loved hip hop. We would just love like jamming, and then people would come and freestyle, and then I would throw out a hook, you know, and that was like the culture within Utrecht of that first education. Later on, my interest went more further to neo soul, R&B, more to that side. But yeah, hip hop definitely one of the greatest cores you could have as a musician.
Yes. Um, okay, so catch me up. Let's go further in the time machine. We're going to dial forward a little bit. How did you end up meeting Needles?
Ah, that's a good one. So I was studying at the conservatory. I just finished the voice, and we were not with many black kids on the conservatory, maybe 4, which two of I was one of the mix with, I think, one other person, and the other 2 were adopted. So I remember that when we wanted to talk or find connection when it comes to black music, or that there wasn't a lot of it. Actually it was all psychedelic rock, you know, we're hippies type of vibe. And if you weren't, I was certainly not one of those, you know, you would fall out of the boat because they were like, yeah, you know, yeah, you sing nice, but yeah, you're not Kate Bush. Right? Oh, so anyway, so I remember that one of the adopted ladies that was doing this the education as well, she came to me, she's like, hey, I know your aspiration is to go to the States. I was like, yeah, true. She said, yeah, there's this competition. I never heard about the competition. Mind you, Netherlands is small, and I pretty much knew of every musical black competition there was. And she's like, yeah, I think you should sign up. You could maybe work with a Grammy winning producer. I was like, oh, that's dope. I'm gonna do that. So she actually sent me or connected me with the organizer of the event, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna do this. I did a song, I think a cover of Bob Marley, and I think the same or the day after that, I got a phone call like, hey, you're one of the winners. So there were like 6 winners, right? And they were doing this for 5, 6 years already straight. And then, so I was like, oh, okay, cool, wow, you know, I want to travel to Atlanta. Awesome, working with Needles. And we did that. And that was actually the only thing from that contest. You would go out there, have the experience, and that's it. And I remember I went, I don't know if you remember Needles, his old house with the
Yes.
garage. Yeah. So he had a toilet in that studio, right? But he had a Rothko hanging on his door. Remember? Do you remember that? So I was introduced to modern art 6 months before I met Needles because I was working in a modern museum. So for the first time, I saw a Rothko. The whole Guggenheim collection was flown over from New York. There was a whole presentation. I was guarding that collection. So I was like, dang, this is beautiful. Why? Because I wasn't brought up with it. Why didn't I, you know, do research more? And so 6 months later, me being obsessed with modern art, going to the toilet of a hip hop producer, closing the door, seeing Rothko, I was like, whoa, what is the connection here, right? So I stepped out the doors like, yo, son, you like modern art? Like, what? He's like, oh, well, I got more to show you. And he's like, okay, everybody, just keep on working. I'll be back. And he took me in his house, actually. He gave me like a tour, little tour. And then he only has these modern art pieces, right? I was like, this is insane. Like, I never thought that a hip hop guy would, because in the Netherlands, I maybe saw two black people at the exposition. That's it. Right. So for me, it's like, isn't this a white man thing?
Yeah.
you know? So for me, it was a whole new world being opened. I'm talking about 6, 7 years ago. Right. And then we had this conversation about art. And then he actually told me, he said, well, now that I'm alone with you, I have a moment. I actually want to work more with you. I was like, what? Okay, me too. That's amazing. Of course, let's go. And that's how the partnership came about. We
Wow.
started this partnership. We got introduced to TL Cross. Those were really cool moments whereby we were creating music. And a few months later, I was back in Atlanta and we were making Kairos.
Wow. Wow. Okay, so as far as Kairos is concerned,
Uh-huh.
um, it's Greek, and the definition means appointed time, right?
True.
All right. Is that? I mean, it seems I'm taking that as a message to myself, a reminder to myself. But how did you come to the conclusion that that's the name that you wanted the album to be called, and what factors went into that? What did that represent for you?
Um, well, first off, we heard it for the first time in a sermon of T.D. Jakes. And my sister and I, we were sitting, and my sister and I, we've always done business together for the last 11 years, right? So she knew me from that alternative chick with only beanies, with her hair stuck in the beanie, with Adidas tracksuit. That was, you would not recognize me. You would actually pass me by with a backpack, always with a backpack like this size, with my clothes in it. I was this type you would call me like those hippies, those modern hippies, but those strange modern hippies, I could say. Anyway, enough about that. So she met me from that point all the way to me being signed to Rock Nation, right? And we were listening to the sermon, and we just had the news a few months. It's like, okay, wow, this is happening. We can't say anything because we were quiet for over a year. We didn't tell nobody. And she's like, don't you feel like from 10 years till now, this is like a Kairos moment where he's talking about? And then she looked at me, she's like, how cool would it be if that's your album name? Like jokingly, like that would be so cool. I'm like, oh, you got the name of that one. That's it. Like,
Dope.
that's
Wow.
how it came to pass. I was like,
Wow.
wow, yeah, that's it.
Did you sit down and it's just and everybody's putting their favorite songs. Rain is one of my favorites easily. The melody is just it's just
Yep.
masterful.
Thank
Masterful.
you. Yeah.
But what was the process, the creative process like, working with that? Because I remember coming into the studio one time with needles, and you were there, and there's all the toys that you could want, you know, in the studio in terms of instruments, as well as you've got the digital stuff also. So what was the creative process like when you were creating Kairos?
Well, I have to give props to the team because I think this was one of the last sessions we did, and I came in and he picked me up from the airport, and he was like, "Yo, I think we have something really, really good, like really good." I was like, "Okay, well, it's like, you know, sleep out your rust, and I'll make sure that tomorrow morning I'll bring you in, and we're gonna have a listen." I was like, "Okay, well, yo, son." The moment I came in, they pressed play. You know, he had, I think he didn't have the barefoots anymore. He had like the not Austin, what's the name? Anyway, those really
The
big,
big speakers,
great
the
speakers.
Osbergers.
Osburgers, thank you. Yeah. I still love the barefoots more though. I'm a
Yeah,
more
they're
big
good.
fan. Yeah. Ah, techies. Okay, so they pressed play and I was what? I was okay, well, hold up, play this, oh, like only the beat. And I didn't know that Busta Rhymes and Snoop Dogg actually rapped on it before. They really educate me in a lot of some of the samples I did not know, you know?
Mm-hmm.
I was like, this is insane. And then we just started building from that piano loop with the drums.
Yeah.
We started building to, okay, we're gonna do the bridge over here, and we just started writing, you know, because that's important for me. Like, what I'm saying is what I experienced. You're not listening to somebody else's story. Obviously, if Cross wrote with me, then you'll hear a bit of his experience, but it's always in line with the story that I want to share, right? So that's how it came to pass. I think we
Wow.
did it in 1 day or 2 days. Yeah, it was really
Wow.
quick.
How long did the album take to make?
5 years in total.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice. Nice. I love it. Um, do you, what was the success like for, I remember where I was when I heard you for the first time. I was in the car, was driving, and then I heard, I was like, oh, shoot, you know? And then, you know, I just was looking, I'm like, okay, that Joker is going up, it's going up, it's going up, it's going up. And, um, before I knew it, it was number one, you know, on adult. And I was just like, wow, you know, it's actually tied for the fastest song to go to number one on that chart. So congratulations. I don't know if everybody out there knows, but that's a super huge accomplishment. And especially when you've taken the time to put the work in, it's just a
Yeah.
nod to the people who don't skip a step, you know?
Yes. And
Um,
it was a team effort, you know. I have
yeah,
to give props to everyone that was involved because I feel like Kairos is definitely one of those projects that you can feel everybody's love. This is not even, we're not talking talent, we're not talking about flipping good samples, we're talking about love, like pure love and dedication for the music. And that's what people hear back when they listen to it. This is like us nitpicking words and thinking how would be the children's reaction, like how would they bop on Mr. Big Shot, you know, like those little things. It's like the love and effort placed in it. Yeah.
yo, that's amazing. So I know you've released Dutch projects in Dutch before. Do you ever see yourself doing that again?
Not anytime soon.
Okay. Okay. What's that like when you're, you know, like for me, trying to sing in French is more difficult because I'm like the ideas are not the same. The way you say the idea doesn't exactly translate, and I could only like Dutch people. I just wonder how they're able to sing in both languages and still write in both languages and accomplish that. So, is it a completely different system when it comes to writing in Dutch?
I
Like,
feel like the cadence sometimes could sound alike,
okay,
But there's definitely a difference, especially when it comes to the tone of my voice. I feel like you can still hear it's me. But I remember one French guy once said to me, you should never, never sing in Dutch anymore. No, no, it's so harsh. You're very soft, but like I cannot do the French accent. I wish I could. But the way he said it in French, you could not get offended, He's like, no, 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 no Dutch for you. Just keep it English. And oh man, I cried. I was only, because I can't get offended. People are talking from the squares like, okay, it's like, no, it's too harsh, too harsh.
Yo, that's crazy. Um, I saw you did Tiny Desk as well. Is it really tiny in there? Because I see people get credit. Yeah.
It's freaking tiny. Man, I was like, oh, dang, because I'm 6 feet tall, right? And I'm like, whoa. I'm like shooting up, trying not to bust anything, on the floor. But it was cozy. And it was one of my, my bucket lists. So for me, getting a Billboard #1, a Tiny Desk, a BET, like all those things, like, whoa, like what's happening, right? It pays off. Let me put it that way.
Do you feel like you were prepared when it came?
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah. I think 15 years should be more than enough.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. I mean, it's one thing to, you can get used to being in a position where you're wanting, where you're waiting.
Yeah.
And sometimes you get so used to waiting that you still are shocked, you know what I'm saying? But I think being able to just go ahead and lock in there and get it going it's the key,
I was shocked though. I don't want to say that. I was shocked, but I was ready. I was ready for anything to come my way. And I've prayed and I've cried for so many years, like 10 years of having, cry moments, many years of those 10 years fighting against depression, finally coming to a place where I feel and I know that I'm healed. I'm like mentally, spiritually, emotionally, I forgave. I can move on. I was like, oh, damn it! But I was expecting it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what's up. Let me ask you this. With everything that's been going on recently within the world and how we've been on lockdown and everything, have you been creative at all, or have you just kind of been reflecting? Like, what's been your process over the last couple of months? How have things been for you?
I've been pretty creative. I do have to say it was hard because I had to put off social media for a while and not still keeping in mind to show my support, to be there, go to protests. But I feel this is a season where you need to guard your spirit because there's so much toxic right now, and it's like we're at war. That's how it feels for me. Mm-hmm. It's like there's a war, but there's an invisible war whereby it's a war against your mental health and functioning. Because if we get out of this and you can still function sharp and know what to do, kudos to you, because it's been a very hard few mental months for everybody, I think. So for me to get creative again, and I don't know if you can see, but I'm in my small
studio. Yes, let's go.
Like these are waiting for you, man.
Yes.
So yeah. Anyway,
yes, beautiful.
So I've been, because I really love tech and gear and vintage stuff. So I've been just searching the internet for vintage stuff, trying to get my sacred place in order, how I like it, and just make music.
That's so cool.
And you? Do you experience it?
I haven't. I think when everything first started, I was actually creative because I didn't understand the seriousness of everything. So for me, when you're working, like I work at home, I've been working at home anyway. So I
True.
wasn't really moving around to begin with. So I'm just like, okay, everybody else is doing the same thing. You know, it didn't
Yeah.
really dawn on me initially until maybe like the first day I went to the grocery store and the line was like to check out was like down and around and around and around. And I was just like, oh my gosh, this is really serious, you know? Um, so I have not been as creative in the sense of writing new songs. I've been creative in the sense of the way I interpret songs that I've already written or
Right.
songs that I love of other people. So I've just kind of been rediscovering my love for music. You know, I listened to Prince's Piano and a Microphone the other day, and it's just him on the piano, and he's literally going from song to song to song and killing on piano and vocals. And I just was like, man, you know, I want to make sure that when I'm performing, it feels like I felt when I heard that. So it just made me start like playing some songs that I have again, like, oh, okay, how do I, you know, do I just want to sing it that way? Or is there an opportunity for me to create an experience in the performance, you know, not just necessarily do the song from top to bottom. And there are times for that, but at the same time, I think there's a time to, you know, hold a chord out and leave people in suspense and, you know, all that stuff. So I've been creative inside of things that have already been created, but I'm kind of getting back into the swing of things now, you know.
Did you
Um,
clean your folder with all your songs?
did I what? Create a new folder?
No, did you already start cleaning up your like your I don't know what DAW you use. Do you use Logic or Pro
Yeah,
Tools?
I use Logic.
Okay, did you already start cleaning that Logic folder of yours?
I have, you know, I need to just get a new computer. I've been rocking with the same machine for a while, and I've been way more domestic than I used to be. So I kind of got my washing hands together. Um, and I've been trying to cook, although, you know, as long as it's edible to me, at the end of the day, I win. I'm not saying I would invite anybody over for dinner, but I have
I hear
tried
you.
things in that way, you know, as well. So just loving on myself and being, you know, that being cool with where I am and also being thankful. Living in a state of thankfulness this entire time because uh I didn't know how, you know, the income was going to really roll in, you know what I'm saying? That's people who don't know necessarily about songwriters and that type of thing. It's not money all the time. You know, there are particular times when you get money. So you have to be a very good steward over the money that you get because you don't know what the next paycheck is going to be like, you know? So
It's like thin peanut butter on on a dry sandwich, like thin, you know.
yes.
You can't be greedy with it. You gotta be
No.
like, oh, got a
Yep.
little bit of jelly, a little bit of
Yep.
peanut butter, I'm good.
Yep. So, you know, when shows started, like that was a major way for me to make income. And I had a bunch of shows that got like canceled. So I just have been thankful because the way has been made for me. I know it's not me, you know? You know how when you know it isn't you, that's when you can really just be as genuinely thankful as
True.
possible. But it's in that moment that you realize, you know what? This is the way I need to be all the time. It's not complicated, but when you get humbled in a certain way, and I've been humbled enough, Lord knows, but it's nothing wrong with a little reminder, you know?
True, true. And
Yeah.
I think that's beautiful as well. I think that's one of the biggest lessons we'll take out to God, hopefully very soon, 2021, because we're done with this.
I
We're
don't think
done.
any of us should get any older this year.
I
Our
believe, yeah.
birthdays just don't. This is like a leap
Yeah.
year being in a leap because you know this year is a leap year. So there was a 29th day of February this year. I feel like this whole year shouldn't count. Nobody gets any older. We'll just put an asterisk by 2020 in life, in the years of life, and we'll start over in 2021. We just need to just ride it out, you know? Mm-mm.
I'm telling, do you remember that story of the prophet that prayed and the time and the sun stood still? Have you ever heard about that Bible story? Well, I
Mm-mm.
believe we should take that story and just implement it for the
Yes.
whole 20, like the sun stood still. That's
Yes.
it.
That's it. That's all. Um, I'm sure you have some fans that want to know what they can expect next from you. If there's anything, I know things in Europe are different. I mean, I know the EU just banned all of us from coming over there. So
Really?
you know,
Oh, I
yeah,
missed that.
they
When
said
did that
no,
happen?
no U.S. travelers.
You know who's responsible for that, right?
Yeah. So like it just happened, I think today, actually.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow. That's why I don't watch news anymore. I'm
Yeah.
sick and tired of being sick and tired of that freaking news.
Yeah. I was
Oh,
looking forward to getting over there too. Like this, that I was just like, please, I mean, but it is what it is. That's when that dual citizenship and passport would come in handy, but it's all good, you know. But I was curious, I guess when things continue to open back up, I mean, are you going to be kind of in still creative mode, or do you want to get out there? Should we be expecting for you to get out there and maybe do some performing in some ways like that?
I would only love to meet my fans, but I'm not jumping to get outside anytime soon,
Yeah.
especially not. The last thing you want to hear is that people had a great time, they were touched by the music, and later on you make the news or the shade room like Nicole Bus, like all the 300 people that were present got COVID-19. I ain't
Yeah.
got no, I'm still climbing. I ain't got no time for that, right? So
Yeah.
I'll be creative.
Well, I wanted to give you an opportunity to address the people that are tuned in right now, to check you out in person, before we peace out for the day. So the floor is yours.
Well, everybody that tuned in, that made it this far, thank you. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for your comments. I know, Cameron and I, we've been chit-chatting. Have not really been reacting Nashville. Yes, I'll try. When I come, I'll definitely try to go all over the US. Thank you guys. Just know we're working on the release of the live album, which was recorded in New York City, and I'm working on new stuff. And for the producers, I'm working on a sample pack. Text me. I have a link in my bio. It says text Nicole. Click on it, fill in your info, and I'm releasing a sample pack. Pow. Okay, that was
Nice.
it. That
That
was
was
it.
great. That was enough. Well, listen, I appreciate you for stopping by, and once we get a hold of things, I definitely would love to just do this in with musical instruments and recording
Yeah.
opportunities around. So be safe over there, and continue to make music. And we're all listening to your stuff, and we support you. So just letting you
Thank you,
know.
Cameron.
No
Thank
problem.
you for having me. And you have a spot in the city of Amsterdam where you can come hang out, make music, and write history. But be safe until that time.
Will do. See you
Thank you,
later.
sir.
All right. Bye bye.
Bye.